How did CGN get started?
IPv4 addresses are set to run out. There simply aren't enough of them, and the user growth far outstrips the fixed address space available. The industry chain for IPv6 offering a larger address space is maturing rapidly. However, IPv6 content is insufficient. IPv4 and IPv6 are expected to coexist for a long time. During this coexistence, IPv6 transition technologies are required. CGN is the most common such technology.
How does CGN implement IPv4 to IPv6 transition?
CGN is a NAT technology in nature. NAT allows many users to share fewer public IPv4 addresses to access the network. This somewhat alleviates address space pressure, ensuring smooth transition from IPv4 to IPv6 for users and services.
So, NAT seems to be the essence of CGN. Can you tell us how it works?
In terms of translation objects, NAT can be categorized into port address translation, PAT, and no-PAT. In no-PAT mode, NAT translates only IP addresses but not port numbers. This mode ensures security but does not conserve public IP addresses. In PAT mode, NAT translates both IP addresses and port numbers. Therefore, public IP addresses can be conserved. In terms of translation modes, PAT mode can use 3-tuple or 5-tuple translation. In 3-tuple mode, also called full cone mode, the user IP address, user port number, and protocol are key parameters. For example, after A accesses B, B can access A, and C can also access A. This mode is primarily used in peer-to-peer applications. The 5-tuple mode, also called symmetric mode, involves the source IP address, source port number, protocol type, destination IP address, and destination port number. For example, when 5-tuple mode is used after A accesses B, only B can access A. C cannot access A. Therefore, 5-tuple mode is more secure than 3-tuple mode. However, 3-tuple mode is more prevalent.
What are common CGN technologies?
NAT 444, DS Lite, and NAT 64 are common CGN technologies. NAT 444 was used in the early phase of IPv4 to IPv6 transition. NAT 444 involves NAT being performed on the CPE and again on a carrier device. 2-level NAT conserves public IP addresses. DS Lite is used in the middle phase of IPv4 to IPv6 transition. DS Lite allows IPv4 users to access IPv4 resources over an IPv6 network. That is, an IPv6 network exists between the IPv4 user and IPv4 resources. NAT 64 is widely used in later phases. It allows IPv6 users to access some resources of IPv4 islands and enables IPv6 users to directly access IPv4 resources.
What issues does CGN deployment bring? And will user experience be different?
User experience is unaffected by CGN deployment. However, deployment may affect some applications. For example, many users access some game room. Because NAT is performed, these users share a public IP address. In this case, such access requests are considered an attack or an exception on the server, so the server rejects the requests. Server-side improvement was necessary as CGN became increasingly widely used. This problem has been solved and there is no longer any impact.
Common NAT is performed at layer 4. However, for some application layer protocols, for example FTP, the payload may contain private AP addresses and port numbers. How does NAT process these protocol packets?
To cope with such an issue, ALG technology is used. NAT ALG converts the IP address and port number at the application layer in addition to the IP address and port number in the layer 4 header of a packet. In this way, protocol interaction is properly performed.
After NAT is performed between the private and public networks, private network users' network information is hidden. Can the private IP addresses of the user be queried if necessary?
This private IP address can and should be queried according to local security laws and regulations. A log function called log source tracing is used for this purpose. Several types of logs can be used in log source tracing: radius logs, user logs, and session logs. User logs are generated for each user. When a private network user goes online, a log entry is generated containing their private IP address, public IP address, and public port range allocated to them. After the user goes offline, a log entry is also generated. The user logs appear in pairs. Session logs are created based on flows. When a user accesses the network, a log is generated for each session. A log is also generated when a session times out. Therefore, the detailed session logs greatly outnumber the user logs. However, the user logs are sufficient for source tracing. Radius logs are also used. They are generated only after CGN is deployed on a browse. This is because a radius server is needed to process radius logs. In terms of log volume, user logs are more prevalent, and there are few usage scenarios for session logs. Processing session logs poses high requirements for a log server and storage space.
What are reliability requirements for NAT services on a NAT device?
Various NAT reliability functions are used, such as interboard backup, inter-chassis backup, and centralized NAT, providing backup for distributed NAT. Interboard backup refers to when two CGN service boards are installed on the same device to implement board-level protection. Inter-chassis backup provides device-level protection. Device-level protection offers broader protection than interboard backup. For example, device-level protection can defend against link faults, device faults, and board faults. In addition, centralized NAT providing backup for distributed NAT is used in a certain scenario. If a browse is equipped with a single CGN service board and this board fails, traffic must be diverted to a centralized NAT device connected to the CR. In this scenario, centralized NAT provides backup for distributed NAT.
Which hardware is used to process NAT services on physical devices?
VSUF boards are primarily used, such as the VSUF80 and VSUF160. A VSUF80 can be equipped with an SP80 subcard for capacity expansion. A VSUF160 houses two SP160 subcards. In addition, onboard devices are used. Onboard devices are fixed configuration devices, such as the NetEngine 20E and M2F, which provide NAT functions. No VSUF board is used when NAT is performed on such devices. The devices have their own boards to support NAT services.
Which NAT deployment schemes are common?
Distributed NAT and centralized NAT are popular. Distributed NAT is primarily used on a browse. For example, a VSUF board is installed on a browse, and the browse performs both user access and NAT. When a user dials up to go online, the user obtains both a private IPv4 address and a public IP address. The other deployment scheme is centralized NAT. This is used on some devices attached to CRs or the SRs that do not process user access. NAT allocation is triggered by traffic.